pass over to Dave Ellis, who's going to talk to us about defence.
Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, John, Gavin, James. I've got to say first off that apart from Brian Gerrish and the team at the UK Column, the first people that I've met so far politically are Gavin and the DNV party that have wanted to stand still and confront this freight train that's coming towards us, all wrapped up in a lovely chocolate Kit Kat, as we're being informed by the bureaucrats in Whitehall and the Cabinet Office, as to what's actually really the big deal in Brexit. All right, and the deal that Theresa May and her Conservative government are trying to pitch you. It's not a special relationship, it's not a deep and special relationship, it's not cooperation, it's not partnership. We're dealing with something called military union, all right? European military unification into military union. And that's an all-encompassing concept as far as the EU are concerned. It's a long-term objective for them. And the reason this is so important is because once you've got military union on the pan-European basis, it allows the EU to stitch up everything. Operational budgets, capital budgets, procurement budgets, policy, industry, officer training. It'll take control of national militaries and unify into single point control from Brussels. So what you've got here effectively is Parliament has decided, we could call it, to subcontract to a supranational corporation our entire military, Her Majesty's Armed Services, lock, stock and barrel. Or should we say all Her Majesty's barrels? Because that will inevitably have to include Trident and the nuclear submarines that are all encompassing there, and all the industry at Barrow. So we're faced with the prospect here of Theresa May pitching to the general public at the ballot box something called a deep and special partnership. And when you break it down into its component form, of course the devil's in the detail, and they're not going to articulate the inconvenient bits that they don't want the general public to know about or understand. Because rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, as far as I'm concerned, and everybody that I speak to that's in service or knows somebody in service, and I'm not just talking about Royal Navy, Royal Marines, Special Forces, Paras, Army, Navy and Air Force and everything. I'm talking about all the other guys in service, because they're all going to be roped into this, because it's not just the military, it'll be the police as well. It'll be the intelligence services. It will all come into single point control from Brussels as an all-in, a paramilitary service of everything. It's so important for them to get control of the money, to underwrite the euro, because once you take control of that budget, at the moment is under parliamentary competence, right? It will be shipped into the EU and they will take competence from it. So Parliament isn't working. The MPs are not doing their jobs, and the reason for that is they don't represent you, they represent the party. And they are party representatives, first and foremost, not MPs. So start viewing them in that way, and it'll all sort of make sense, because they're whipped from the Treasury. The Treasury whips the MPs, and the Prime Minister is the First Lord of the Treasury. That's who she serves. And the parties are not making policy. So let's not make enemies of people that are in the Conservative Party, the body of the party, or the body of the Labour Party. These people are all innocent. They have no idea about what's going on, so their own party won't even talk about the inconvenience here. So whilst we're all familiar with currency union, yeah, we all know about currency union, the euro, all right? We all know about customs union. They're prepared to give you that one. They won't talk about the inconvenience of military union. They're breaking it down into a freight train of bureaucracy. We've got PESCO, we've got the Common Security Defence Policy, and a whole load of others, about a dozen acronyms for all this. I won't bore you with them all. It's all in a granular form. You add it all up, it's this thing called military union. Now I know it's called military union because Avril Harriman, the chief envoy to the EU, told us so in the 1940s. Now ask yourself this, ladies and gentlemen, why, for all this time, how many generations since World War II do you think that would roughly be? 4 generations? Why have they waited that long to float this now during Brexit? We're leaving. We're not part of that. Well, how the hell do we leave when our military is going to be run from Brussels? And the industry. And all of the other manufacturing and engineering that goes on in Britain is anchored off that Grade 1 military stuff. So what do you think is going to happen when Federica Mogherini gets control of all this budget? She's going to up the defence spending. They're already talking about it, they're already drifting that out. We're going to up the defence spending. What that's going to mean is we give them for free all of our military, and then you all get a tax bill. Because Federica Mogherini, very quickly, and all her cohorts there in Brussels, Junckers and the rest of them, Tusk, they're going to get an EU treasury the second they formalise full competence of military union, because it activates the treasury. Once they get their treasury, they have monetary union, and they will tax on a pan-EU basis. And who's going to pay for all this defence spending? You. Me, everybody else. And this is the inconvenient thing that the Tories won't talk about. Now I can tell you that there's something extremely sinister going on. Because Vote Leave, when I went into Vote Leave with an admiral who's a 30-year practitioner in insurgency and counterinsurgency, all of the top brass refused to talk about military union. As have all the backbench MPs I've spoken to, as have some ministers. The only people I could get to stand still were the senior officers that sit in the Lords, the likes of General Dannett and Lord Boyce. But we had one lovely lead during this period from Lord Tebbit. Margaret Thatcher was formally asked, this is a verbal process at that level of the pyramid, all right, asked by Jacques Delors in 1984 for military union. This is the reality. Of course, they're dressing it up now in all this other stuff, so you might not see it. So, ladies and gentlemen, the heart and soul of this nation are frankly the people that serve. And I fundamentally do not believe that put to the people of this nation, if they were aware of it, would they subscribe at the ballot box to this thing called military union. That's precisely the reason Theresa May won't even refer to it that way, so that you don't get to know what's really going on. She's calling it a deep and special partnership. We've just heard from David Davis that the defence component in the draft deal is now secure, and that is military union. So as far as the draft deal is concerned, we are lock, stock and barrel, deeper in now than what we were in 1972 under the deception from Ted Heath that we thought we were joining a common market. We were not, and they knew it. So what we've got to do is turn this thing upside down, because at the moment Parliament is bearing down on you, and what needs to happen is you need to bear down on Parliament. And according to their manual, Erskine May, the idea is that the MPs who represent you, and at the moment they're not because they represent the party, they purport to represent, you've got to get in there and you've got to gang up. Don't go in on your own. Gang up and put as much pressure on them as you can. If they won't heed to, because we've tried this about 6 months ago with Caroline Stevens, who's an ex-UKIPper, we mail shot loads of MPs with a concern letter on the basis of trying to talk to them about military union. What we got back was essentially a government template letter from the party. So regardless of what MP we went to, all over the country, we got the same letter back, with the same wordsmithing, the same spiel, the same don't worry, there's nothing to worry about, this is a cooperation, integration. We've seen lots of these PR washwords coming out of Number 10. And let me tell you just how devious Number 10 is. It was me and my company that broke the Number 10 letter from David Cameron when he purported, without consulting any of the senior officers, that they were subscribing to remain in the EU. And it was me that broke that, because we had a tip-off and a source in Number 10. We went to one of the senior officers, Chief of Defence Staff, and all hell let loose. So instantly the word from those guys is actually what's going on here, Dave? Why are they doing that? Well, very quickly, they're going to link you to supporting staying in military union, and that's the military key factor. So, you know, let's not be under any illusion just how nasty, dirty and dangerous this situation is. It's going to require all of the people who serve, the 4 million veterans in this country, to be aware of this as fast as possible, and for them to talk to their friends and family as fast as possible, so that 30 million people within a matter of weeks wake up to what's going on. That is the task. That's the plan. You know, you guys out here have got to go and talk to everybody about this, because this is the big deception of Brexit. Because it's the only thing that's been agreed prior to the deal. The deal. But the deal isn't trade, because business will get on with that regardless. Business will carry on one way or another. The real deal here is their agreement to go into military union. They just won't talk about it, and they just won't even refer to it. Now, if we refer to it in the fashion I've said here, this is military union, everybody in Britain will understand within a second and a half just exactly what that is, and I can assure you we will get the same reaction I got from General Dannett. The people in Britain will not support this. So it's all very well, General, but they don't know about it. So this is where it comes over to you guys in direct democracy. We've tried to have a good go at this with the UK column, you know, but we're just not getting to, you know, enough people quick enough while all this is taking place. So it's vital that we get the lid off this. And I've got to say in sort of closing, if you think you're dealing with the defence cuts in this country, hands up if you think you're actually dealing with defence cuts. Brilliant, good. I've got an audience here that's already on the right track. We're not dealing with defence cuts, we're dealing with something called unification. They wanted to blend, merge. Germany and France were never going to let us in with 100 ships and 500,000 men and a budget that was a lot bigger. It was get it down, now we can join. Because that is actually what's happened, where they've sold everyone cuts. Oh, it's all right, everybody accepts that because it's a cut. Oh yeah, it's money, we haven't got the money. That's the first lie. And we're not dealing with a cut, we're dealing with blending and merging from a very, very high perspective, from a policy control point of view that's way outside of Parliament, because Parliament is circumvented on this. The MPs are not looking at it, they won't look at it, they're refusing to look at it. There's only a handful that'll stand still for 5 minutes while you try and talk to them about this, because the party structure won't allow them to deal with it, because it's a supranational thing that's trying to take control of it. So our Parliament has effectively been locked out, it's been moribunded in something which is a fundamental, that you'd think it would be a matter of fact, wouldn't it, for an MP, that he'd want to have retained competence over a nation's military. Well, if we don't have competence over our military, we're not a nation.
Correct, yes, correct.
The game over, and that's Brexit, is it? Really? Okay, well, you know, I'm not subscribing to it at all, and I've fought very hard over the last 5 years in order to get the lid off it, and I'm very, very grateful for John, Gavin, and James to be coming along and standing still and be prepared to confront it and actually have a go at it, because Labour and Conservative are refusing, because they can't sell it at the ballot box. Nobody will vote for it, so they think they'll just brush it under the carpet and it'll all go away whilst Federica Mogherini takes control of. And this is not just a problem for Britain. France is going through it, Germany is going through it, and they're having exactly the same problem, that their governments and their representation are not talking about this. Hands up in here who thought that they had this put to them in a democratic mandate at some stage during where they voted over the last 20 or 30 years. Have any of you had it? No? Strange that, isn't it? There isn't a democratic mandate for it. And this is the problem. If enough pressure is brought to bear and holding the government's feet to the fire on this, there will have to be a general. But it's down to the public to do it, and it's not down to a handful of officers. So I've got to give credit to Admiral Roger Lane Knott, Major General Julian Thompson, Royal Marines, Lord Guthrie, Richard Kemp, and one or two others who've continually tried to push this, despite the fact that even when Lord Tebbit articulated in his Telegraph article the actual componentry that was currency union, treasury, military union, all in the same package, so that people could understand how the money stitch-up was going to work. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen here is, when they get control of the money, they will place the defence contracts. You get that. You get that. Britain, what do you think we're going to get? Like we did with the fishing, like we've done with everything else, that's the score. And of course, while all this is going on, what little engineering we've got left in this country is under as much risk as the military itself and the command of that. Now, the other thing that we breached as well was the fact that the government were lying and saying that they were going to veto. Do you remember David Cameron saying he would veto the EU military HQ? We all remember that? We're going to no, we're going to veto that. Well, that's really odd, because it already existed. Ladies and gentlemen, where did it exist? It existed at Royal Navy Nuclear HQ at Northwood, across the corridor from where our bombers are commanded, with 100 EU staff in it, fully operational NATO-spec military C3 HQ. And there are 4 across Europe while all this was going on, and we're going to veto that. No, we're not going to let the EU have it. They already had it. It's a lie. There's one in Paris, there's one in Potsdam, how ironic. There's another one in Greece. And they can operate full military union in 6 to 12 hours by one switch. Go. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're under any illusions as to how you think this is going to work, this isn't just your industry, your jobs, anybody involved with engineering, or anybody you've got involved in military service. I was asked by a senior officer how I envisaged that the actual grouping of troops, whether that be Navy, Air Force, Marines, or whatever, would work. And it's very, very clear that what you'll get is EU-trained officers, EU command, and you'll have groups of guys from here and out and everywhere put together in a group, and then they will be placed, the chances are, in another country. So we could have conglomerates of other troops come here that would be commanded from Brussels under the guise of EU training, EU battle groups, EU exercise. Do any of you want that?
No.
I spent many, many years with my father, a Royal Marine, talking to other Royal Marines that had served all through various different theatres, asking what the hell was going on in our defence and in the military, to find this over the last 5 years where we've been researching it. So rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, this is the big issue. All the other stuff that they're talking about pales into insignificance. So I can just close with this. You know, this is the thing that we've got to get out there and talk to everybody about, group, and start holding the government's feet to the fire. Thank you very much.